Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Behind the Small Business Podcast. My name is Kevin Dandino, your host as always, and this is, of course, brought to you by Centennial State Insurance Agency. Today, I am joined by Mr. Jim Myers, owner of the Sasquatch Outpost out there in Bailey, Colorado. This is going to be a fun show. So, Jim, first off, thank you very much for joining me today. It's going to be a great conversation, man.
You're welcome, Kevin. Thank you.
So, I was thinking before the show, and kind of trying to frame, think of a way to frame this. And, Sasquatch, a lot of people debate whether it's real or not. But one thing is for certain, the Sasquatch Outpost is a very real thing and is very successful.
Correct.
From what I can tell. You've been around for a while there, so I'm excited to hear your story. So first question for you, man, is kind of just what is the background behind the Sasquatch Outpost? What kind of led you to opening this place? Why Bailey? And kind of just, all the background information there.
Well, the background is not that I always had a desire to open a Sasquatch museum or store. That was the last thing on my mind. We actually opened this current store. This is our first experience in retail, and we opened it as a mercantile grocery store. And so we had groceries, we had some antiques, we had odds and ends, and but we also opened it. So this store was built in 1878. It's I believe the oldest standing grocery store in the Front Range, and
wow.
And it had always been a grocery store. Upstairs, where we're building another event, which I'll tell you about in a minute, upstairs had been a residence. It had been a theater, like for plays. I'm not sure what all they used to do up there, but downstairs was always a grocery store from the time it was built until we took it over. And we started off that way, but while it took us about 9 months to rebuild, some of which was due to our own incompetence, some of which was due to delays invoked upon us by the county, which I will not go into that, but that all delayed us for 9 months getting open. And so during those 9 months, I met a woman who is from Bailey. She doesn't live here anymore, but she was an eyewitness, and someone else told me about her. So I called her up and asked if I could take her to coffee. I think it had been maybe a month since she had seen this Bigfoot. She and her best friend both saw it. And it was, I think they saw it. So I met her in like September, early October, and she had seen it at the end of May. She and her best friend were out for a walk behind. She used to run Bailey Lodge. If you know Bailey at all, you would know Bailey Lodge. So they were back behind there on some forest land, and long story, but they saw a Bigfoot very clearly. Both of them saw it. Still daylight. Two people. A two-person daylight sighting is really hard to discount, and they both agreed on what they had seen. And so I was fascinated, and I had been interested in this topic since I was a kid, but this was the first person I'd spoken to who actually told me, yes, I saw it. Yes, it was a Bigfoot. No, you're not crazy for thinking they might exist. And so and here, she's a businesswoman. She wasn't out looking for Bigfoot. This was something that just happened. So anyway, that really got my interest up. And again, this is before we opened the store. And then the Animal Planet show Finding Bigfoot came to Bailey and did an episode like late October of that year, and packed it out. 100 people in this room. I don't know where these people came from, how they found out about it. I never saw any advertising for this meeting. But you give people an opportunity to be on TV, and they're going to gather. So
for sure.
I like to watch that episode because I'm right in the front row wearing a bright green shirt. which I wore just so that I would be able to see myself on TV.
That's
And
smart.
so we decided that we would open it as the Bailey Country Store, which is what it had been, and Sasquatch Outpost. And so the second line we kind of put below the main name of the store up on top. And we immediately had people. Well, I put I cut out of Bigfoot on the front of the building holding a sign. The sign said, I don't believe the evidence supports the existence of humans, and got a lot of traction with that sign. But people started coming in and talking to us about stuff that had happened to them
Yeah,
because they didn't have anywhere else to go.
sure.
So after about 2 years, and after us eating most of the groceries ourselves because no one was buying them, we realized that a grocery store may not be the best option for us. And we had a business consultant who said, you're going to have to just decide, are you going to go Bigfoot or are you going to go groceries? Either way, you're going to have to ditch the other one and go all out, or you might as well close up. So
Right.
we took the risk, went with the Bigfoot theme, never looked back. I mean, this year, this 2024, not 25, but 24 was the first year we posted a loss since we opened. And
Wow.
so, but every business in Bailey has battled this year. It's been, election years are never friends of local small business. So,
Hmm.
dramatic decrease in business, dramatic decrease in income. We're still in business. We don't plan to go out of business, but it's been a tough year. And again, we're not alone. Every business in Bailey, Kim's business, who you interviewed previously, they have struggled. So that's kind of how we got going. Nothing that we planned. It just kind of evolved into this. But now we are known around the country and around the world. I have people flying in from overseas to do trips with me.
Wow.
We have people coming in all the time from all over Europe, Africa. I mean, you name it. Some of whom didn't know we were here. Some of whom just drove by, saw the sign on the highway, and said, "I got to see what this place is." And but I think we opened our museum in 2016. We've expanded 3 times since then, and I think in those 8 years, we've had somewhere around 90,000 people go through that museum. So it's been very popular. People from, like I said, from all over the country. So we're grateful that it expanded like it did, that people's interest allowed us to stay in business and expand the business. And we're hoping that this summer will pick up from where we left off with this election year. So
Yeah. It's a fascinating story, and I think one thing, I mean, other than just it being a cool story in general, looking at it from the business owner mindset, it sounds like you had kind of a unique experience in that you had to choose,
yeah,
one type of business or another, right? And I think a lot of either aspiring business owners, particularly them, probably have their heart set on like this is what I'm going to do, right? And maybe not anticipating some of the changes or flexibility they need to work into their business model, or just
100%.
being ready for that. So maybe what were some of the struggles that you faced, or maybe delve into that decision a little bit more in terms of what did you have to really consider when it came to picking one over the other?
Well, first of all, let me say hiring a business consultant was the best decision we ever made. She was worth
Mm,
every penny we spent on her, and she was instrumental in helping us choose the right course. Over about a year, we met with her, and we spent a lot of money meeting with her, but she,
yeah.
in the end, saved us a lot of money and got us on the right track.
Mm,
And so some of the struggles were, well, the grocery store, we had to admit, was not working the way we imagined.
right.
We thought, well, surely Bailey wants this grocery store open. It had been boarded up for 4 or 5 years. before we took it over. It took almost 9 months to get everything. I mean, we tore off a whole section of the store. We had to fix plumbing leaks, 20 plus 20 plumbing leaks. Colorado weather is not your friend when you have a building that's just sitting vacant.
No,
It
No.
destroys the building. And so we had a lot of work to do. But our dream was we're going to have this grocery store. It's going to be great. People are going to come in, buy all their groceries here. Well, what we didn't count on was that people drove out of, County Road 43 or 72 and headed towards Denver. And they don't come down to downtown Bailey. And so, or Lower Bailey or Low Bay, as our chamber is calling it, to the chagrin of some in the community. But we didn't count on the fact that people were going to buy all their groceries at Safeway and King Soopers, and if they came into our store, they were coming in for, I need one thing of mustard, I need 2 apples, I need, you can't survive as a grocery store unless people are buying groceries, bags of groceries. You certainly can't support hired staff and things. So it after about a year, we're paying rent on this building and everything, and fixing it up at our own expense and things. So after a year, we began to see the writing on the wall. I think it was after sometime between the end of the first year and the beginning of the second year that we had to do something. Now, in the meantime, the interest in Bigfoot was growing. We had what's now our museum. At that time was a converted storage room. In fact, the whole museum is converted storage space. But we had one room at that time that was being used. We had kind of some chairs and tables in there, and we had a map of Colorado on the wall. And as people would come in and tell us about something that had happened to them or a Bigfoot they felt like they had seen, we would put a pin on this map. And so the map started to have more and more pins. So as the interest in groceries was waning, the interest in Bigfoot was improving. And so I would say the first key thing was hiring this business consultant. The second was being able to admit that what our dream had initially been was dead. There was no possibility. Now, the dream, true confessions, the dream came about in ignorance. We'd never run a grocery store. We'd never run anything retail. We didn't know how to do any research. We didn't know. So had we done some research, we probably would have realized that people don't need a full service grocery store in Bailey. They're just not going to use it. Right. Doesn't matter what you carry. You don't carry as much as King Soopers and Safeway. So it was going to be for convenience only. Now, the other grocery store in town now, Rosalie Market, they have made it based on the fact that they're a specialty grocery store, not a general grocery store. So people go there looking specifically for their meats, which are excellent, or for certain produce or things they carry that other grocery stores just don't carry. And they seem to be holding their own, so which I'm very happy for. But we were ignorant about how to start a grocery store. We didn't know what it would take to run it. Back in the past, when this grocery store was the going thing in the community, there were places you could go in Denver and buy wholesale groceries as a grocer and then sell them retail. Those businesses are all gone. So we had to buy retail and sell over retail to make any money. Well, people, they know what it costs to buy something at the big supermarkets. And so it just, things had changed so much. For the days of mom and pop grocery stores are pretty much gone. I mean, you cannot survive well. Those that are still in business, my hat's off to them. I wish them all the best. We just found that for us, we were eating the groceries, and that wasn't the plan in the beginning. Now, conversely, the Bigfoot side was people's interest was increasing. We were selling Bigfoot souvenirs that we were buying wholesale, and that wasn't what we expected that we were going to be doing. So we had to have a significant shift. And that's where this business consultant said, you know, and she was encouraging us in that direction. She would have helped us no matter what decision we made. But
Right.
she could see the writing on the wall for the groceries as well. And she herself was a big Bigfoot fan, so that helped. But she was very astute. She was kind of a business consultant / life coach, and she helped us as much on the life coaching side as she did the business.
Oh, wow.
But
Okay.
I remember when it was a big risk to take. It was a risk either way. If we went with the groceries, we knew it was a risk. If we let go of the Bigfoot side, and it would have been a risk that we already thought was probably going to end in closing the store. The Bigfoot side was an unknown. Can we really make it as a Bigfoot souvenir store? That's all it was in the beginning. We didn't have a museum. It was just a souvenir store. In the beginning, there were so few vendors who were selling Bigfoot souvenirs that we made our own t-shirts. We made our own mugs. We made a lot of what we were selling. But so it was a big decision to make, but it was either the Bigfoot side's going to work or we're going to close up. And this poor building will get shut down again for however many years, and until somebody buys it and probably tears it down, because it needed to be condemned. It probably still should be condemned. But it was a risk that we took, and it paid off. And once we made that decision, it was either go all out or, fish or cut bait. You're going to have to go all in for this to work, or don't even try it. So whatever we were investing in groceries, we sold all the equipment, sold all the existing groceries that we had, and invested money in buying Bigfoot souvenirs, redesigning the store to match more of that than a grocery store, because there were some differences for sure. And never looked back. And again, this year's the first year that we've posted a loss, and I'm not discouraged. I feel like this is a sign of the current political environment, and it will change. This too shall pass. So,
well, it seems like any kind of business owner should be anticipating those kinds of things, right?
Yes.
I think a lot of business owners maybe understand the idea that, hey, it might take 5 years to start to earn a profit, but it seems like they might feel that after they start seeing that profit, hey, that's going to be kind of a year in, year out kind of deal.
Well, right? And those 5 years, we were told, if you're still in business after 5 years, you'll probably stay in business. If you're going to fail, it's going to fail during those first 5 years. And that never a truer statement was made for us. I mean, it was by the skin of our teeth for the first 5 years, but things like end of year 4, beginning of year 5, things just started to change. And we had been around long enough that people knew we were there. They were coming in to check us out, even if they thought this was the biggest joke in the world. They still came in, and they still walked around, and they still bought souvenirs. And so that all contributed to the fact that follow your dream. And this was a dream of mine. I mean, honestly, I didn't know if it was going to work, but I was so infatuated with Bigfoot and the concept of Bigfoot and looking for Bigfoot. I thought, man, if you can make a living doing this, why would you not? And people look at me like, you're the nuttiest person I know. Seriously. I mean, I would never do what you're doing, which is fine. I probably wouldn't do what they're doing either. So we've all got our niche and that's the key is, businesses that are struggling, I think many times haven't figured out what their particular niche in the community is, because there's a bunch of restaurants in town, but they're all different. And they have different ways of doing things, different, and what they offer is different, and they seem to be making it. But a lot of restaurants have come and gone, a lot in this town, who I think either were bad managers, couldn't quite figure out this whole restaurant concept, and it's not something I would ever want to do. I would never want to. Man, what a tough job.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So the more niche you occupy, that people are looking for that. In our case, Bigfoot. But thankfully, the whole country is infatuated with Bigfoot. So you find it
Exactly.
on every other decal, you see every other logo. So for that reason, people are like, oh, yeah, let's go check out this Bigfoot place. Do you believe in
Sure.
Bigfoot? No, this is the biggest joke ever. But they came in and they bought
They
stuff
came
and
in.
they proved my point. So,
Right.
um, long answer to your question, but that's
No, that's great. And you kind of touched on one thing that I wanted to bring up was that community involvement, right? I think every business owner kind of has a different take on when it
sure.
comes to their approach of community involvement, and it does have to be based off of their business and making sure they represent who they are, right?
Of course.
So you, as a very unique kind of business, what are some of the things that you do that or your approach to how you are involved in the community that could also be used for other kind of unique businesses out there?
I'm kind of a weird person. I probably am not the right person to ask that question of. The reason being, in addition to what we do, which is sell Bigfoot souvenirs, have a Bigfoot museum, and now we're building a Bigfoot themed escape room upstairs.
Oh, wow.
Then we have another whole company called Rabbit Hole Adventures where we do tours and things. So all of that, as you can imagine, it keeps us very busy.
Sure.
But in the community, I've always been involved in the community. I'm never going to be owning a business in a community and not be involved in the community. So
Yeah.
I remember the first Chamber of Commerce meeting I ever attended in 2012. I left that meeting in the role of vice president and being in charge of Bailey Days. And I'm
Wait,
like,
what?
what's Bailey Days? So, I mean, what the heck? And so literally that's what happened in that first meeting. And I think about that now, and I thought we could never get away with that now in the chamber. I mean, just throwing stuff at people like, yeah,
Yeah.
you're
Here you
fresh
go.
blood. Here, you do this. But I did it, and I got. And what that did was it threw me into the middle of the Chamber of Commerce and being on the board, and which gave me some idea of how the chamber works and things. And I've been we've been with the chamber as a business since 2012. I've been on the board now for different cycles of the board. I've been on, I think, 5 or 6 years, all told. But so I'm very involved with the Chamber of Commerce. And in our case, being in an unincorporated town, the Chamber of Commerce is the only body that exists that's looking with any interest at our town. Otherwise, if we were depending on our county, God bless them, they're in fair play. And I think they kind of look at Bailey as their toe-headed stepchild that they wish would go with Jefferson County and leave them alone,
Right.
But the problem is 60% of the population lives in Bailey, which means 60% of the tax income is in Bailey. If Greater Bailey ever went to Jeffco, knock on wood, it will never happen.
Right.
Park County would go under because most of their tax base is right here. So anyway, but being unincorporated, the only group that's doing anything is the Chamber of Commerce. And I think people from outside in Bailey, people from off who are outside the chamber, look at the board and think, we're paid by the state, or the whole thing is volunteer. Everything we do is volunteer. And all of us who are on the board do it because we want to see our community thrive and for our businesses to thrive and our residents to want to stay because they love so much the way Bailey is. And I think we're doing a decent job of that. So I'm involved in the Chamber of Commerce. I also volunteer as a care team member for the Park County Coroner's Office. A
Okay.
lot of people say to me, like, man, I could never do that, because what that job means is when there's a death in Bailey, 99% of the time it's in a home. We go to the home with the coroner, usually ahead of the coroner, to talk with the family, help them figure out what their next steps are. Well, for a lot of people, the idea of interference is not the right word. The idea of being around other people's grief is just more than they could
Yeah.
conceive
That's
of.
tough.
We on the care team feel the opposite. We feel like this is a privilege to be involved with these people in the most difficult day of their lives, and to
Yeah.
make it just this much easier by showing compassion, giving them dignity. Someone wrote on social media, we had a call a couple days ago, and this is the first time I remember this happening in all the years I've been with this team. Someone wrote and said, I just want to express my appreciation for Park County deputies, sheriff's department, and the coroner's department. And they said why, named everybody by name, the deputies, us. That just never happens. And I
Sure.
said to the coroner, deputy coroner, obviously we don't do this for the recognition, but boy, it sure is nice when somebody
Yeah.
acknowledges that you're there and you're trying to help. And so I do that. And then just in my absence of any other free time, which uh, I'm in my brain, I'm kind of ADHD, so I'm always running from one thing to the next. So that suits me to have
Yeah.
a lot of interests, as long as
Sure.
I don't get over committed to too many things. But um, love the coroner's team, love the Chamber of Commerce team. Encourage any of the businesses in the greater Bailey area, if you're not a member of the chamber, join, because that's where you're going to meet other business owners with whom you can network and figure out how you can
Mhm.
cross promote and all these kinds of things. So
And I think
it gives you a platform for people to use.
exactly. And first off, I think that is such a unique way to give back. I think when
Mm.
business owners, and again, this is me, not a business owner, kind of just based off what I've seen or heard. And I think when people, picture that idea of community involvement, they
Mm-hmm.
think of, volunteering and, community fairs or, big, things that are put on by the city or whatever.
Right.
But there are so many unique ways that, you as a business owner can, hey, what is something that I'm comfortable with or a strength of mine that isn't directly tied to my business, but I can use, that interaction, or my position and experience with just working with people to be
Yeah.
able to give back in any number of ways. And so that's an incredible story right there. And I, for one, applaud that. I mean, that
Well,
is
thanks.
definitely something that not a lot of people can do. And I'm not saying that everybody has to go out there and do that, right? But what are some of those other ways other than sponsoring an event or,
Right.
sponsoring
Which is
this or that,
also a
right?
possibility. Yeah.
Sure, and that's fine, that works in its own way, but what are those other little things you can do within your community? And, it's really cool to hear that you do that, man.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think the only part of it that bothers me is when something happens that the chamber comes into the limelight, which has happened
Mhm,
recently a couple of times, and people jump on social media and all they do is just slam, 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 slam.
mhm.
No, I mean, almost zero constructive criticisms like, why don't you think of this? Or maybe you ought to consider that, but just, you know,
Yeah.
bam, bam, bam. And I'm thinking, as I'm looking down the list, I'm thinking, I don't know a lot of these people, but I know a few of them, and I've never ever seen them help anywhere in the
Mm,
community, help with an event, help with something that they can give to that they're not going to get paid for. They're just doing it because they love their community and they want their community to thrive.
exactly.
Um, and that spirit of volunteerism seems to be dying as well, because my parents' generation was probably the last generation that really was involved in their community. But these days, it just seems that for many people, wow, I got my job, I got my family, and I can't handle anything else. And that may be true, but for a lot of people, they could get involved and they would actually find that their business will grow as a result because of the contacts they're going to make within that group of people, which is now, I want to say 160 members in Greater Bailey. So
Wow.
a lot of home based as well as brick and mortar.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, again, it goes to that idea of, taking ownership of your business, but then also taking ownership of your community, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
100%. 100%.
that can go so far, and you just don't know who you're going to meet along the way.
Nope.
You do it, like you said, out of spirit of volunteerism. But the things that it could do to help you, in ways you didn't expect, could definitely be a huge benefit as well.
Yeah.
Now I did see, you're the first business owner I've talked to so far that also runs their own podcast. So, if you could, this is something that maybe other business owners could look into doing for their own stuff. So, what is your approach, or, what have you done with that that's maybe kind of helped your business out in a unique way as well?
Well, this was the second podcast we have. The first one, which went for about, I want to say, a year to year and a half, was called "You Don't Know Squatch," and we did anything and everything. It was me and another guy was my co-host, and both locals, and so we would do things like movie reviews about Bigfoot, or where's Bigfoot in the news, or I would talk about some research I was doing and what things that had happened or whatever. So You Don't Know Squatch was first. After a while, because there was just another guy and I doing it, some things happened, and we kind of made a mutual decision that we need to end that one. Sometime later, I was approached by a different network saying, would you launch a podcast on our network? And so we called it the Sasquatch Outpost podcast. And I think we had I want to say 84 or 90 episodes before we paused it. And the reason we've paused it, my co-host is a woman named Sibylla, who's in Texas, but we paused it because I started working on this escape room, and that has taken all my time.
Sure.
When I was doing the podcasts every week, as you know well, only too well, that you have to go out, you have to find your guests, find people who are willing to be on the show, get them set up for the show, do the show, edit the show, whatever you got to do, or just do it live. But and mine was always live. The first one was pre-recorded. The second one, Sasquatch Outpost podcast, was live every week. So if you weren't ready, it was painfully evident that you weren't ready for that podcast. And you would end up having to, because as soon as you ended that podcast, it went straight to the web, basically. I mean, it was immediately live recorded now. And so whatever bloopers we made or stupid things we said or whatever, it's all there, and flesh and blood. And so that's why many people don't want to do live, is if you screw up, everyone's going to see that you screwed up. And my thought was, either we're just talking about things that have really happened to us, and therefore, what do I need to be worried about what people think about me? Or there's just people who don't believe anything they see or hear. And again, we get every type of person that comes in. But I think the podcast, during the time that I was doing it, and as I mentioned, we're going to be relaunching it under a different name, my co-host and I. But the podcast, it wasn't a huge group, but when we were doing our live podcast, we would have 120 to 150 people engage with us in the chat room live. And then over, say, the next 2 weeks, we would get a couple thousand views. Well, a lot of those people are people who had been in the store or the museum, and if they hadn't, they wanted to come now because they saw the podcast and they wanted to make sure that they got a chance to come see. And we didn't talk about my store very much, actually. We interviewed mostly Bigfoot witnesses, and so maybe 2 or 3 times in the whole 85 episodes or whatever we did we actually just talk about what we're doing.
Right.
But it was called the Sasquatch Outpost podcast, and it was part of a bigger network of about 10 to 12 other podcasts called the Untold Radio Network. So all of that, the podcast only helped my business. It didn't hurt it, but it did take a lot of time. And I was spending 10, 12 hours a week getting ready for each of those live podcasts. And it's just time I had to have to work on this escape room that we're building. So
Right.
my co-host Sibylla and I are already working on this new chapter with the podcast, and it will be pre-recorded, probably not live. So
Gotcha.
We've done the live thing, had fun, but it has its stresses. And when it's pre-recorded, if you can't get it out today or tomorrow, you could do it the next day. It's not like
Exactly.
It's not like people are holding you like on a live. They're there. I mean, how many times we were 2 minutes late, 3 minutes late, and chat rooms like, what's going on? Where's the podcast?
Yeah, where are you? Come on.
The pressure is on when it's a live podcast. And I love doing the podcast. I could do without the pressure for a while, I think. So
for sure. Somebody who's been doing live podcasts for 10 years now, I can fully understand.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about, doing the podcast, whether it's pre-recorded, whether it's live, I think a lot of business owners maybe get stuck at their desk, right? For lack of a better term, like they're in the books, they're trying to figure out all these things, and they're kind of letting other people be the face of their business. And I think to do something, and it doesn't have to be a podcast, but to find some way to go out there and make sure people know that, I'm the owner, I'm the person behind this business, not to take away from anybody else that's working on the team or whatnot, but, really just reinforcing that, hey, I'm here to help. I'm here part of the community. And so, people feel more comfortable with going and supporting that kind of local business if they know who they are that they're supporting. Right. And I think a podcast is a very unique way to do that. So that's a great idea right there, man.
Well, I, when I'm thinking about needing somebody to do, like if I need a plumber or I need somebody to help me with whatever, I rarely go to Google. I sit there and I think, now, where did I meet that guy? What meeting was I at that I met this other person? And it's those connections that make it happen. And there's a place for Google. When I go to Google, is when I want to buy something, online. But if I'm looking for a local help, almost never do I go to Google. I'm going to find it in the community and things that I've done where I've met people at the chamber or at another business and I think that's a podcast can give you exposure as well locally so that people, now mine was an exception because of the topic I was on. I can imagine this podcast that we're doing right now, you getting some local interest because you're interviewing local business owners. And for all the business owners I know and who I appreciate, I don't know the backstory of a whole lot of them, to be honest, how they ever got that business going or what other businesses did they have before or, whatever the case, which is interesting to find out those facts because everybody started somewhere and they what they're doing right now was probably not the first thing they ever did in business. And so it's always interesting to figure out how did you end up where you are now compared to where you started 10 years ago or 20 years ago, whatever.
Yeah. And I'll just say my experience, for example, you go to a restaurant and somewhere on the menu, it's, our story. and it's just a brief couple paragraphs about who they are and stuff. I read that, like it's like, oh yeah, like let me, I want to learn a little bit more about this place, right? So
Sure.
I think as a business owner, if you can find a way to integrate that into your business structure, I think that's a really good way to just, again, let people know who you are, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Word of
um,
mouth is going to be your best, always going to be the best local
yep.
filter that you're going to get.
Google is great, search engines, internet's great, but it just really can't beat the word of mouth there. Last thing I had for you here, Jim, just kind of, pivot to a topic that I know every business owner absolutely loves to talk about, and that is the topic of insurance.
Okay.
I would imagine, you in kind of your business here have some unique things, that you have to think about or
We
worry
do.
about, but and I really just kind of want to make sure that when I reach other business owners out there, I really want to highlight the importance of not just getting insurance at the cheapest rate to say that you're covered, right? Or you have insurance, so you're operating legally, right? But what are some of your thoughts when it comes to insurance? What are some of the worries maybe you have that are unique to your business, and how you approach those? Just to make sure that you feel comfortable when it comes to thinking, yeah, I'm covered.
Well, we probably have, let's see, we have one carrier for our business insurance. We
Mm-hmm.
have um, we have a different carrier for our home. We have a different carrier for our vehicles. We have a different carrier for my liability insurance for my other business. I think another one for our workman's comp. I think we have like 6 insurance
Yeah,
companies because they all kind of specialize a little bit differently.
sure.
Obviously, in the mountains, for anybody to get homeowners insurance is really hard now. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's our hurricanes in the Florida and the Gulf Coast. They can't get any insurance because of hurricanes. We can't get it because of fire, and
Yeah,
so finding an insurer who's willing to you know go the extra mile to get you insured for fire is a big deal. And there's a lot of people up here who don't have any fire
yeah,
insurance, period, which is a very dangerous place to be living where we live. But it's
yeah,
because they've been dropped by every carrier and they couldn't find anyone that would pick them up.
yeah,
So yeah, for sure, if you have local people ensuring you, show them some love, because if they drop you, you're in trouble. And
yeah.
but and we have a very old building which presents challenges for an insurer and underwriters. Is like, your building's how old? 150
Yeah.
years old. And you know, yeah, we're not sure we want to get into that. Or so the age of the building, the which is inherently a fire risk and things like that. It's been tough, but again, knock on wood, we've got. I'm very happy with all the insurers we have right now. Um, and as I said, I believe we have our store insurance through Centennial States, but um, uh, it makes a big difference for me. Now, I think you guys. Let me think. There's one other company that insures us that's local meaning Conifer, Evergreen, Bailey. The
Right,
others are all online, big companies. But
right.
it makes a huge difference being able to call somebody up who's in your town and say, I got a problem. I need some help with this insurance problem, whatever. If I call up, Progressive or whatever, I may get some help, but they don't know me from Adam. I mean, they're just doing their
Exactly.
job with the million other people they insure. Versus, and um, Kevin didn't coach me to say this, just for
I didn't, I swear.
the versus calling my local agent up and saying, okay, I need some help with this and this and this. And then they know my name, they know my business, they know we don't have to go through the 50 questions to figure out first, who am I going to transfer you to, who's going to transfer you to, who's going to transfer you to, versus that person. You start and stop with the same agent. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um, But some of our needs are so unique that I can't find that coverage locally, and I have to go elsewhere.
Oh, sure.
But
No, and that makes sense. So I think a good just overarching idea there is, for somebody, don't feel like you have to put all your eggs in one basket, right? It might be a little bit more pricey, but to, like you're saying, like, here's this need, here's this worry that I have to make sure I'm covered for. Who's the best one for that? Is it a local one? Is it one of the bigger carriers or whatnot? And find something that makes sense for you. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure you go to bed at night feeling like, that secure feeling of, I know I'm going to be okay, should, God forbid, something happen, right?
And at least give the
And
local companies the opportunity to see if they can meet those needs. I
right,
mean, if
exactly.
they can't, they can't. But if they can, my preference is to go with a local company, and we have for 2 or maybe 3 out of the 5 or 6 carriers I mentioned. So
Awesome. Well, no, I seriously appreciate you kind of sharing that, thought process. And for anybody out there who's listening, obviously, here at Centennial State Insurance Agency, I'd be more than happy to talk to you and see if there's anything we can do for you. So, Jim, why don't you kind of spend just a little bit of time telling people how they can find you, whether it's online, just kind of promote yourself a little bit there, man.
Well, we are located at 149 Main Street, next to the Cutthroat Cafe and across the street from China Village. So we're very accessible. That's our brick and mortar. We have our museum there. Starting this summer, we hope we're going to have a Bigfoot themed escape room called Deep Woods Sasquatch Escape Adventure. And then online at sasquatchoutpost.com, where we have an online store. You can buy most of the things you could buy in our physical store in that online store. And then Rabbit Hole Adventures is the second company I began for all the things I do with people out in the woods, taking people on night hikes, camping, etc. And that is Rabbit Hole Adventures altogether .co, not .com. Many people think I made an error when I put that in an email. Oh, you mean .com? No, I meant
No.
.co. So there you can find all the trips and the things we're doing this summer, and we're getting booked up. But yeah, that's how you would find us.
Okay. Well, awesome. So everybody out there, again, Bailey is a great place to go by. Not too far out of Denver. Tons of awesome local businesses, business owners like Jim, who really care about the community and are very passionate about what they're doing. So definitely, if you trying to figure out one of your next upcoming weekend plans, maybe going out to Bailey is a great idea. I know, Jim, I'm a big escape room guy. So
awesome.
You're going to be seeing me out there. That sounds like a fun one for sure.
You bet.
Well, thank you, Jim,
thank you,
spending your time with me this morning. For everyone else out there, thank you for tuning in to yet another edition of Behind the Small Podcast. And again, if you are a business owner that would like to be highlighted on an upcoming episode, please feel free to reach out to us, send us a message on Facebook or something, or let us know in the comments section, and be more than happy to figure out a way to contact each other and set something up. Or if you know another business owner that you would like to, have themselves be highlighted or something, we are looking for more people and just love these conversations. So, Jim, again, thank you very much. And we will see you all next time on Behind the Small Business. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.